Thank you, Council President Glass, Vice President Friedson, my HHS Chair Albernas, and Public Safety Chair Katz, my colleagues, and a shout out to my fourth floor neighbor, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez and her staff, our amazing central staff here at the council, and an extra special shout out to our counselors to the council who have not been given thanks yet today. And I want to make sure not everybody appreciates lawyers the way I do, but I do. And my office team, Aaron Kraut, Sarah Wolf, Doug Wallach, and Lindy Hill, for all of the patience, persistence, and incredibly hard work that has been put into navigating this budget process. I said this earlier on in the budget process from up here on the dais, and I'm going to say it again. I understood the assignment, which was to be thoughtful and analytical about the fiscal landscape of the county, the services necessary to the education, health, safety, and economic development of Montgomery County, and balancing the many competing needs with one another to reach an outcome for this next fiscal year that recognizes the county's economic priorities and needs and sets the tone for future restraint, realignment, and reprioritizing county government operations. I also recognize that the current financial landscape is one that the 20th Council, a majority new, inherited and followed the 19th Council's unprecedented need to make decisions in a rapidly altered environment to protect the health and welfare of county residents during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I appreciate that this 20th Council collectively has had to make incredibly difficult choices in order to deal with digging out of that. From my own perspective and priorities, I provide this summary of my inaugural budget experience with the Council. First and foremost, we took care of our thousands of employees who serve our residents. Although this was my first budget for the county, I am not new to government employment, having been one of those government employees at the state who was pulled into many directions during the pandemic under the category of other duties as assigned, and working closely with our education, behavioral health, and public safety partners throughout that time showed me what frontline government employees at the state and local levels had to endure to keep things afloat, adjusting in creative ways, and enduring for sake of the betterment of the community during that critical time. Those teachers, social workers, behavioral health specialists, medical professionals, and public safety professionals, as well as our park and planning professionals and nonprofit providers, kept delivering services, adjusting to meet needs within the restrictions necessitated by the public health emergency. With the investments in our employees in this budget, we've made clear that we appreciate you, we need you, and that you are valued public servants. Our commitment to that is demonstrated by our initial funding in FY23, continuing forward of a $20,000 recruitment bonus for new police recruits to bring us in line with neighboring jurisdictions, all of whom are struggling to fill vacant law enforcement positions. Retirement plan improvements for all emergency call center staff who have been facing enormous pressure in a significantly understaffed department. And funding sufficient to allow MCPS to fully fund its negotiated agreements with teachers, school support staff, and administrators. The work of valuing our employees does not stop today. Value isn't always a financial one, though it certainly helps. There are operational changes that need to be made, and in some instances, realignment and overhaul of agency operations, improved climate and culture within work environments, and breaking down siloed operations between agencies and individual departments. Our county's government operations need to be collaborative, cooperative, and modern. We also need to do our best to remove barriers to hiring. To that end, I have already taken specific steps and very intentional steps to collaborate with executive branch departments on recruitment issues. My first piece of legislation ended up being co-sponsored by the full council to reform a specific impediment to hiring new county employees related to the collection of medical information, and was done collaboratively with the Office of Human Resources. Director Anderson's leadership and willingness to collaborate when we were both brand new to our roles led to a positive outcome for all. I've also been working with Chief Jones and our labor partners to push the State of Maryland's Police Standards Training Commission, which regulates the certification of new officers, to update and modernize its regulations to match current state law so that we no longer have needless barriers to recruiting individuals who want to dedicate their lives to serving as law enforcement officers. With respect to MCPS, we need to have partnership and trust. And as I previously stated, that trust is now fractured. It was a disservice to our teachers, staff, student advocates, and families who are already concerned about issues within the individual schools and their children attend to stoke anxiety about compensation, as was done in this process. It was disappointing to have conversations with MCPS leaders deep into the budget process in which we found ourselves explaining to them the fiscal reality faced by the county. To rebuild trust and prepare for the upcoming 2023-2024 academic year and the FY25 budget process to follow, it is critically important that the designees of the school system and its elected and appointed leaders come to the council for an open and honest conversation about a common and agreed upon approach. In doing that, I expect candor, a willingness to accept system shortcomings, an eagerness to improve for the future, and a rock-solid commitment to placing our students and their families and the staff who serve them in our individual schools first. Much like with county government operations, I expect MCPS to fully engage in rethinking its operations to the direct benefit of our students, staff, and MCPS families. Another theme of this year's budget was the fiscal sustainability and the course correction which must occur moving forward. Yes, we're making needed and deserved investments in our employees, and we're making additional investments in programs and projects that will benefit our communities. But it's also true that in order to do those things, we're increasing costs for our residents. Significant costs in many cases at a time when so many are facing rising expenses across the board, and additional federally funded relief programs and grants related to the COVID-19 pandemic are ending. We cannot continue down this path, and I will not support continuing down this path. Montgomery County must achieve a much higher degree of fiscal sustainability and revenue growth via an economic development, because we cannot tax our way out of low economic growth. The choices we made in this budget reflect only a small amount of the measures we must take to address fiscal sustainability. This is just a starting point. Deeper underlying structural changes must be made to both correct course and prevent us from getting into that situation in the future. It's incredibly hard to say no to individual programs and initiatives, many that are worthy and have potential to make positive impact in someone's life. But we have to be more realistic with the public about what services or programs the county government can actually afford. Unless reevaluation of those programs is done with a lens toward fiscal sustainability with existing resources, we will find ourselves in a position where we have to reduce or eliminate programs and initiatives just to balance our books. I've discussed some of my priorities related to fixing that moving forward, and I know that I'm out of time, so I'm running to the end. But just please know that I am committed over the coming months to continue working with the county executive and my council colleagues, because I know I'm not alone in this sentiment, to pursue legislative and policy fixes to these underlying fiscal management issues. I want to highlight just a couple program or project wins, one being the Youth Harm Reduction Initiative, which will provide $670,000 in additional funding for an impressive group of nonprofits and service providers who know their communities that they serve, working in collaboration with our public safety professionals to provide teenagers in Gaithersburg and Montgomery Village with real options, outlets, and opportunities, developing resiliency, the importance of respect, and attaining the educational opportunities they deserve. I also want to highlight the Violent Crime Information Center funding. Between 2020 and 2022, violent crime increased by 21% in Montgomery County. It has been one of the top issues of concern in my district that gets raised with my office. And while I know this is a broader trend across multiple jurisdictions and across the state as a whole, it's my job to make sure that we do what we can to mitigate and prevent violent crime here. This investment is critical to helping our short-staffed sworn officer complement to identify those who have committed violent crimes and stop future crimes from occurring. Thank you for making sure our major renovation schedules for Damascus and Magruder High Schools have stayed on track. And I want to highlight the leveraging of state funding that we've been able to do for the Bowie Mill Bikeway, which has now been accelerated by 6 months due to the state's funding commitments, and the only police satellite station and community facility this weekend, soon to be named, in memory of Officer Noah Leota. This is a great opportunity and demonstration of how the county can work collaboratively with our state lawmakers and the community, including chambers of commerce like the Olney Chamber, in getting this permanent building built. Finally, and just briefly, I have not forgotten my commitment to making sure that the MCPS bus depot in Shady Grove is relocated. in order to fully realize the master plan for that area. There's $250,000 in this FY24 capital budget dedicated specifically to finding sites to relocate the buses. So rest assured that I'm committed to this, as are the residents of Durwood. So my ask for FY25 preview is going to be for funding to execute this plan and carry out the relocation. I am thankful for the opportunity to serve, to collaborate with all my colleagues, and to deliver positive change for Montgomery County. Thank you, Mr. President.